Swim Things in Blue Springs, your one-stop shop for all things swim. Pools, spas, patio furniture, swimwear, and accessories. Visit them in Blue Springs or at www.swimthings.com.
My goal is, okay, I'm going to get you in the best possible position when you're 18 to either go to the US on a scholarship or speak to British Swimming about going in one of their national centres or go to a really top university like a Loughborough or a Bath and give them that opportunity to give them the next step. So my job really is preparation for that next step. And if I get
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Journey. I'm so excited to be talking with today's guest. Our guest today is Will Philpot. He is the head coach of Crawley Swim Club in England and the third generation in a line of very successful coaches. He wishes to someday achieve the success his father and grandfather have achieved, and then some. Please welcome Will Philpot to the show. How are you doing today, Will?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. So, when you think about this, you've had we were just talking about, you're the third generation of line of coaches. You're now coaching on a swim team. How does it feel to know that, your life has brought you to this moment?
It's been a bizarre journey. There's this whole tag is about the journey, and it has been a weird one. But I don't really know anything else. I've been around swimming my whole life. Started competing at 7, and then I've always been around it. I've always been involved in it in one capacity or another. So I don't know. It's bizarre. Like I knew I would always be coaching. I knew I would be. I knew I wanted to do this. It's just I've never had any other thoughts. So it's just meant to be.
Now, we're going to talk about your life as a swimmer first. Is it true that both of your parents were swim coaches?
Yes, both of my parents were swim coaches. My mum was my coach sort of from a very young age up to the age of about 13. And then I moved squads into my dad's squad because my mum was the assistant coach. My dad was the head coach. So that was a very strange thing altogether in of itself. But yeah, both swam. My mum was a national level swimmer, and my dad made the Mexico Olympic trials. He was racing David Wilkie on the 100 breaststroke that year. So yeah, that's how far back it goes.
Wow, so they're not just great coaches; they're great swimmers too. That's a really great motivator, I hope, for you when you were growing up as a swimmer.
Oh, it really was, and knowing both of them swam. And so they knew what I was going through, all the highs and the lows and successes and the failures. It was all, they'd been through that themselves. So when I had that experience, it was easy for them to relate.
How much or how was it having your parents serving as your swim coaches? I'm sure it was a bit weird, as you said, but in your opinion, how was it for you?
I'll go with interesting. Let's go with that. But no, there was a lot of pluses with it. There was that extra level of support. Like they'd known the kind of day I'd had before I even got to the pool, so they knew how I was going to be training or what things to look out for. I guess the downside is that sometimes you never got away from it. So if you had a bad session or you had a bad practice or there were things that I wasn't happy with that I wanted to talk about, I took that home with me, and there was almost like there was no break on some days. So yes, it was great. Yes, it was good. And yes, there were loads of positives. But I'm not going to say it was all positive. There were some negatives in there as well, just in terms of separation. But no, on the whole, it was good because they, like I said, because they were swimmers and they'd been through that road already, they got where I was going.
So having your parents as a coach, did you ever have any sense of favoritism, like they were leaning toward, working toward you more exclusively, a little bit harder? You had, inside line to what the workouts would be that day. Talk about, maybe your experience with other teammates and how you felt in that environment, knowing that your coaches were also your parents.
That is a really good question. That is an excellent question. Thank you for asking it. Yeah, it's it. I guess there was multiple. Like I said, there was multiple sides to it, and I think the biggest thing was having your coaches as parents kind of made you kind of made me a bit like the snitch, as in like if anything happened in the locker room or if anything happened in the pool, that there would always be that fear that if I heard it, I would report back like some kind of mole. And that just wasn't the case. I just wanted to fit in, I just wanted to fit in with the group. And, at times that I'm not gonna lie, it was really hard. There were times that they would go out and, do stuff as a team, and I would just never get the invite. And that was really hard to take sometimes because I just didn't feel like I was part of it. As we grew older and as we matured and, we got 18, 19, 20, and even today, I'm still in contact with a lot of my teammates. Like some of them came onto my stag do, my stag party. So my bachelor party, as you guys will call it. And we're still really good friends now, but it was just at the time, there was that little stigma. And in terms of favoritism, I would actually go the other way. I felt like I got probably more hard work and more harsh treatment than the other swimmers. And I think I've spoken to my dad about this since, like in my sort of 30s, like early 30s, a couple of years ago about it. And he was saying, you know what, I probably was quite hard on you, but look at what you've turned out to be now. And so it's kind of like, okay, so everything that happened has led to this point now. And yeah, he was harder, and some of the swimmers did notice, but I didn't know any different. So it's only when I look back, I go, "Ooh, okay, that was fun." But no, on the whole, you can't say that. I mean, I'm in a position now which I love, with Crawley and on the England talent team as well, developing that as a coach. And I don't think I'd be there without it. So those experiences, although I felt were probably negative at some stages, made me who I am now.
And you grew up as a distance swimmer. Was that something that just came naturally to you, or were that forced on you that you were going to be a distance swimmer?
I'm gonna say it's probably biology for me because I'm 5'11", right? I'm 5'6" with shoes on. And for me, when I was 18, to give you a kind of idea of my frame, when I was 18 years old, so ready to go to college, I didn't go to university in the end. I decided to go out and work, and I'm doing university from home now. But I was 5'11", and I was 150 pounds. So at 18 years old. So to be a 50 sprinter was just not going to happen. So it was the long distance stuff, the 1500s freestyle, the 200 butterflies, the 400 IMs, 400 free. That was kind of my wheelhouse, and that's kind of what I enjoyed doing. I just enjoy the rhythm and the patterns of these things. I didn't like the splash and dash because I couldn't really get going. As I got older and got into my mid-20s and came out of retirement for my dad, for a team for a bit, I started hitting lifetime bests in my 50s and 100s. So it just makes me wonder if I'd stayed on a little longer, what would have happened. But you always have those what ifs.
Right. And distance swimming at the time when you were really young in the UK wasn't as strong, as powerful as it is now. And of course, then they had Becky Adlington in 2008 win 2 gold medals. Talk about the development of distance swimming as you were growing through the sport, where you started to become nationally ranked.
I think with myself, I was always one of the smaller guys anyway. So for me to win any kind of medals or do well was always tough until I started doing the events that nobody else wanted to do. So the 200 fly, the 400 IM, the 1500. And when I started doing those and winning meets, I thought, "Ooh, I'm quite enjoying winning meets. I'm going to just practice these events more." And so, my first ever time qualifying for nationals was in the 1500. And, that it kind of came out of nowhere, but then I just kept kind of running with it. And I think over time, more people started to come through underneath. And I'm going, okay, well, some 1500 swimmers are actually coming out now. Then it's not just an event that you do because, well, I've got to fill an evening, why not? And it's people that are actually training for it now. And I think that's the difference. I think with the British team especially, you see gaps in the British team. And you had David Davis around that sort of 2004, 2008 time, who was just fantastic. He won a medal at Athens with Steve Parry. And he was a fantastic distance swimmer, but he was probably by far a standout on his own. And then Daniel Fogg came through later, who was the same age as me. And now you've got loads of guys on the British team who are coming through on the British team, filling those gaps. So I think there was an opening, and I think over time people learn to go for those openings. And that's just I think that's just naturally how it's developed.
So your father and grandfather achieved a lot of success as coaches. Your grandfather founded his own club in Essex, UK in 1976. And your father was a two-time Olympic coach and Paralympic medal winning coach with Susie Rogers. How much did the success of your father and grandfather, you saw in the sport as a coach, persuade you to continue this tradition?
Well, it was my grandfather was on my mother's side of the family, so that's how kind of it all started. I mean, the swimming area for us in our family started off quite tragically. It was my grandfather. Some of his friends tragically drowned, and there was a mother and a couple of her children drowned in a river accident. And he vowed that everybody in his family would learn to swim no matter what. And that's how it all started. It started off as you're going to be safe because I'm not letting this happen to you. And then it kind of evolved from there. So my aunt and my mum, from my granddad's side of things, they both went to nationals. My cousins both learned how to swim and are pretty strong swimmers, but they ended up going into ice sports like ice hockey and ice dance. And I ended up just staying with swimming. And then obviously my dad going in through with what he did with the Mexico Olympic trials himself as a swimmer, and then going into the Olympics for Sydney with Matt Kidd, and then in 2004 again with Matt. Useless fact of the day, Matt Kidd was actually the first British man under 50 for the 100 freestyle in 2001 World University Games, leading off the 4x100 relay. So I've still remembered that because Matt he was teammates with in my squad at the time when he did that. So yeah, that was interesting. Then he went to Auburn in 2002. So there's a little bit of a US connection there. But seeing all the success that my dad had with those swimmers, and then even at a younger age when I was still in Essex, so in my first club championships when I was 7, one of my dad's swimmers won European juniors for the 200, for the 100 and 200 butterfly, and he awarded my first medals with his Great Britain tracksuit on. And that I went, okay, that's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. And it was one of his swimmers. So I knew that if I was going to be coached by him, I was going to be successful.
Yeah, so you've seen success just kept going through the program, and yeah, of course, it's no question you say you want to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. So as you said, it was kind of in your blood to be a coach, but did you ever consider any other type of career?
I did, and when I finished swimming, the only real line of work other than coaching that I had was working in fitness and leisure. So in gyms, and so I worked everything: lifeguard, front of house, sales, fitness management, personal training, right the way through to center management. And I kept changing to different sites, taking promotions in different locations, changing to different companies. And after about 4 years of that, I just started to get bored. And I said, I said to my wife, why can't I, or my fiance at that point, but my wife now, and I said, why do I keep doing this? Why am I not satisfied? And she goes, okay, what makes you happy? And I said, well, the only thing I've stuck at for 4 years in a row is this part-time coaching thing I'm doing at a school, which they were a great school. I love that place. It's called the Hawthorns, and they gave me a little coaching gig there, and it was fantastic. And I said, that's the only thing I enjoy. She goes, well, let's try and make a career out of this then. So I did consider other pathways, but then I got a lucky break with Cranley School, offered me a full-time contract coaching 8 to 18. And that was the real big first time I took over a program, was allowed to run with it. And then the rest is history. Now that's how it wraps up.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating how that all just transpires. You don't even, all these little steps that you take, you don't think that they're going to mean much at the time.
No, absolutely. And every little experience counted for something. I was a junior coach at Crawley before, left there, did the fitness thing, and then went away to do Hawthorns for a little bit. Cranley came along and I did that. They put me through one of my senior coaching courses, which we've got, as well as gave me the swimmers to work with, to show what I could do with a program on my own. I worked for a very small local club in Surrey as well to kind of do double time. So I was on about 80 hours a week at that point towards the end of that in 2018. And then in March 2018, Guildford City, I had a chat with the head coach from Guildford City, Richard Garfield, and the lead performance coach, Lee Spindlow. And I said, look, can I just learn from you guys? I want to be able to coach the likes of, work and see what you do with the likes of Alicia Wilson and Tatiana Bolonogov and people like that who are internationals or going to be, Alicia's in Cal Berkeley, and just say, like, how do you coach these guys? And they said, well, sure. And I volunteered one morning a week to just see what they were doing. After a few months of that, Crawley came along, and then that was it. But it's all these little things that add up, and it's making that personal sacrifice to then get to where you need to get to. But yeah, those are that 80-hour week was tough. I did that for about a year and a half, and I was done by the end of it. I was like, oh, thank God Crawley came along. I don't know how much longer I would have survived that.
How much of your day-to-day work as a coach is influenced by what your grandfather and father did on deck?
A lot, like a lot. I mean, primarily my first thing is safety of swimmers. You know, forget being a coach, forget what set you're writing, forget what the plan is, forget your annual plan. Number one is it's safe. You know, that's the primary thing, and that goes right the way back to my grandfather. In terms of the actual coaching and development of the athlete, yeah, that comes a lot from my dad, but through my dad, I've managed to learn from a lot of really good coaches. And I think that's where the advantage of being related to someone of my dad's level has enabled me to connect with these coaches, because there's a common link. Usually they try and start off finding out how I am. They ask a few questions about different things, and then they always lean in and go, how's your dad? I had this joke with a few of them at the national championships a few weeks ago, and they said, do you realize you guys do this? And they're like, do we? It's just like, yeah, you kind of use me as a way in and then ask how he's doing, because he's now retired. And I don't mind it. I think it's quite nice that he's missed, but you know, just having those little conversations with coaches opens that door, and then I learn a lot from other people. But no, my dad's a massive influence on how I coach. But there's lots of layers there that come from other people as well.
Well, I read that you strive every day to make your name just for yourself as a coach, and not ride the coattails of what your father and your grandfather did. I mean, how easy is that to do, especially since you're the head coach of the team that your father built?
I mean, yeah, that was a conversation that was pretty tough to wrap my head around. And when I found out he was retiring, and I sat and looked at my situation, I thought, if anybody else had been head coach of that club, my application would go in, and I'd be like, right, let's do this. But I had to have a long think and a long conversation with my wife, and just say, like, I always use her as a sounding board. She's fantastic. She used to be a swimmer anyway. We met through swimming. So if you want to talk about the whole journey, that really links into it. No, and we sat down and said, look, if you can apply, but you have to understand, you've got to be at least 15-20% better than anybody else that puts their name forward. And I thought, okay, well, I can do that. I can accept that. Not I can do that, I can accept that. And so application went in, got called in, and I said during my interview, I don't want to get the job just because of who I'm related to. I want to get the job because you think I'm good enough. And if you believe that, then I can live with that, and I can move forward, and I can show you what I can do. And they took the chance, and here we are. And I'm really glad it's paid off. I've had I don't know, no one's come out and said, you know, oh, well, you got the job because your dad and all that stuff, but no one's actually said it. But it's just nice that now the results are coming in, and yeah, he's built some good foundations, but he said, look, if you want to use me as a sounding board, you can, but you know, it's your team now. You run it how you think you should run it. And that's what's been really nice. He's taken that step back and let me just go with it. And if I needed to sound something off, he's always at the end of a phone. So it's been difficult to sort of have that looming over your head, but at the same time, it's motivation to say, no, I can do this on my own. I don't necessarily need his help. I like the fact that I've got that help there. It's not every day you get an Olympic coach as your mentor, but at the same time, I want to see what I can do on my own. And he lets me do that, which is nice.
So sadly, your grandfather passed away in 1994.
Correct.
What is one question you would ask your grandfather today about handling challenges within the club or individual athletes in their situations?
I think it would be more, how has that changed? Because from when he set up a club in 76 to where obviously we are now in 2020, swimming's a very different animal back then. There's tech suits, there's bullet caps, there's nutrition, psychology. The method of training has all evolved, and there's new research coming out all the time about what's good. USRPT is now a thing. So I would really ask him, like, okay, what was it like back then compared to now? And what things would you still do now, knowing what you know about today's swimming? And just try and bring some of those old school values through to 2020 that I think sometimes do get missed. And I think that with some swimmers, they have life very easy with mobile phones and technology. Like, this is going to be on someone's phone. They can click a link and it's straight away streamed. Back in the day, you didn't get any of that. You had to buy a video or a VHS, if you want to go back that far, and hope that it didn't, stutter. So I'd really like to find out from him what he would bring to today's swimming that would add value.
Well, you talked about people like Matt Kidd that were on your team growing up that you got to see and motivated you as a swimmer. Who can we look at on Crawley right now that you might say is going to be the future of British swimming?
So we've got a few. We've had one just leave us called Abby Jackson. She's just gone to Houston with there on a scholarship, and she was kind of the first athlete that I inherited. My dad had her at a national level, had gone through a couple of years of rough patch, and then I took her over in January. We went to the World Trials in 2019 in April, and she dropped 2.5 seconds off her lifetime best on the 200 fly. Went from a 2:18 to a 2:16.5. And that was the real first for me. That was the first real breakthrough moment. And since then, we've had a really great relationship. She's messaging me about what it's like over in Houston at the moment. And I think she's in the right place for where she wants to go forward. Currently, we've got a girl in our team called Maisie Thornton, who is currently ranked #1 in Britain for the 200 fly for 17-year-olds. She's on a 2:15, went 2:12 short at the Winter Nationals before that. She's in terrific form at the moment, absolutely fantastic form currently. And then we've got a couple of good youngsters coming through. We've got a young girl called Emma who won the 200 breaststroke at English Nationals and dropped 5 seconds from heat to final, which was morning to evening. I don't know where that came from either. We've got a few there that are lined up that are ready to go. We just got to, my job for me, because we don't have a university near us, I don't really coach past 18. My goal is, okay, I'm going to get you in the best possible position when you're 18 to either go to the US on a scholarship or speak to British Swimming about going in one of their national centres, or go to a really top university like a Loughborough or a Bath and give them that opportunity to give them the next step. So my job really is preparation for that next step. And if I get some international juniors out of it, that's a nice bonus.
Yeah, something that you were talking about that actually is a good topic for discussion with a coach who doesn't live in the United States is talking to your athletes about attending college in the United States. And I know that in other countries that's could be real contentious, because I know that some of the national organizations actually talk about trying to keep a lot of homegrown athletes that make the Olympic team and win Olympic medals so that they can tout that these are homegrown athletes. But then there's also the conversation that if the opportunities are there in the United States or elsewhere in the world, to let them go there. So how often do you talk about trying to keep athletes at home or send them elsewhere, like to college in the United States?
For me, it's about the individual. If they are very much a home person and they show no interest, then I look at universities within the UK or close by. But it really comes down to that individual person. There's a scenario. I don't have one of these. I'm just painting a picture here. Somebody who, maybe they're a single parent, they've got lots of bills and etc. And that child's only chance, or that swimmer's only chance of getting a really good education and getting top level athletic coaching would be to get it, if they could get it for free, because they can't afford the fees that the UK have. The scholarships that we have in the UK aren't really scholarships, as much. They give you a few £1,000s a year, but it's still £9,000 a year for university. So you end up in quite a big amount of debt. Whereas in the States, they have this option of free education for 4 years. As long as you're a great athlete, we'll give you an education. And for some people for that single parent who may be struggling to get by, that could be their only chance to give their child a decent education. So I think you've got to look at each case by case and look at it. But I will always sit down with my swimmers and go, okay, here are all of the options. Because I don't want to say, look, just swim in Britain and that's it. I'll say, look, States is an option, Australia is an option, UK is an option. Take a look and find what works for you, because it's down to the individual at the end of the day. And if we get to a situation where this country and the UK have these deep scholarship programs that the US have, or equal to, then that changes the game a little bit, and that changes the way things run. But for now, I'm going to just lay out all of the options and let them decide their own path. If British Swimming offers something, then obviously I'll work with British Swimming and Swim England all day. It's just I'd like people to have all of their options laid out in front of them so they know what they're doing.
I really like that. You seem like a very content and very good coach. Where do you see your swimming program in the next 5 years?
Oof, that's excellent. To me, it's a good program, but we are low on numbers. Not that I'm bothered by that. I'm a big believer in quality over quantity. I'd rather have a smaller squad of swimmers achieve all the time than a massive team with barely anybody achieving. So for me, I'd like to keep the team, maybe increase the size of it a little bit. From a business perspective, that would make great sense. I've recently expanded my coaching team. I've got some excellent coaches now. I've got Lisa Mickle and Gary Jones, who are running the younger end of my club. I've got Juliet Bauman, who runs the academy. So we've got a good pipeline coming through. And we've got Tom Baxter as my assistant head coach, who's a world medalist for the Deaf Olympics. So he's got so much knowledge bagged up there. And, I've got a good coaching team now. There's a few more I'm looking at. But obviously from a business sense, that's the future. But for me, it's just trying to expand that team a little bit more, just a small amount, so that we've got the capacity to offer more. I don't want to just say, okay, we can offer you this or this. I want to be able to offer a whole stream of things depending on the type of swimmer you are. It's not all about top level swimming. The top level swimming will happen if the swimmer is dedicated and, I've done my research properly and I'm giving them the correct work at the correct time, which with a mentor like my dad shouldn't be too much of an issue. For me, it's making sure that everybody, no matter what type of swimmer you are, there is a place for you at Crawley. If you want to be a social swimmer or a fitness swimmer, you can do that. If you want to be a para swimmer and aim for Paralympic, you're in a wheelchair, we've got a place for you. If you want to be, training for a triathlon or an Ironman, we've got a place for you. And that's really what I want Crawley to become, is kind of like a place for everybody, like a one-stop for everything, but still keep that high performance element there and keep the pipeline flowing so that success breeds success.
Have you ever really put into consideration adding a kind of a post-grad group above 18 and so that those swimmers who may not want to leave Crawley, not want to leave Will Philpot as their great coach, they have that opportunity?
Yeah, and that is one big thing I'm looking at, is how can we do that and how can we work? We've got some really good facility operators that run our site, and it's just having, the dialogue with them. And if I have a situation like that, it's okay, can we put some additional water time in for these people? I mean, it's just one lane and I've only got 3 people. Okay, but that's how it starts. And then it can evolve from there. At the moment, we've got a few over 18s who stay with the program that I've got. We've got one guy in the Masters at the moment who's trying to get his way into my squad, but he's obviously he's in his 40s at the moment, so he's trying hard to bring his times down to a place where he can train with me 9 times a week. But it's not something we have separate for now, but it is something I do want to do long term. Now, we do have a home program, so we have some swimmers swimming at Swansea University, and when they're back from university, they can just train with my elite group and they can continue there. So there is a bit of a connection, but it's not a separate group that trains regularly, if that makes sense.
Oh, it definitely makes sense. And I know it must be real hard for you, especially since, once they're done with their equivalent of high school, that the birds leave the nest and you have to kind of let them go and do their own thing.
It is hard. But then, you have to go into what the type of environment that we have at Crawley. You have to understand that's my job. That my job is to get them ready for the next stage. We had a great Q&A session during lockdown with Mark Skimming from Bath and Ian Armiger from Loughborough. And, I'm listening to what they're doing and absorbing that level of coaching, and then just working out, okay, so if that's what they need, take a step back to where they are now with me. This is the information I need to make sure they've got before they go to that next stage. And I understand that's my job. Should that change and I get a post-18 group and I get, maybe say there's a university gets built nearby and that we get a link going, then obviously my focus will change, and it will be encouraging them to, if they want to stay with me, to go to that university. But right now it's, when I first went in, I'm like, oh, don't leave, have a gap year, do 1 year just away from uni, let me have 1 more year. But it is just holding on to them, and it's just like, okay, if you're ready to go, just go. But this is my job up to this point.
Right. I think that's something that's really hard for a lot of coaches who work with those younger kids, especially. This is something that's an ongoing conversation in the United States, is the age group coaches want those kids to be really good now when they're 15, 16, 17 years old, so that they could take the credit. And then, they send them off to university, but, they know that if they got them on the national team, they got them on the Olympic team as a 17-year-old student. So, it's really interesting to hear you say that you're willing to just start sculpting that athlete now. And when they get older, if that's when they really start to develop and start to achieve something, you're totally okay with that. I know that's probably a very difficult thing to do.
I mean, for me, because of obviously my history with my grandfather and all that, I kind of get that this is the part of the swimmer's journey. And my job is to, if I give them all the work here and I literally go to town on them and say, like, let's get you to the Olympics, or let's get you to a world championships before you're 18, then they're going to go to university, and it's, where do you go from there? There's a ceiling that you've got to, and if you've already achieved, you kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit. Whereas if I give them the foundation and I build strong bases, when they hit 21 and they're going to worlds or they go into the Olympics at 21, because that base is so strong and other athletes that are around them have fallen, that's going to give me so much. It's that delayed gratification. And it's where you have like the social media argument can come in, where instant gratification is a thing now. Whereas back when I was swimming, you had to try. I mean, I trained for 5 years before I got my national qualifying time. That was delayed gratification there. So for me, I'd rather get an athlete prepared now and then have them be successful at 21, knowing I was a big part of that development period, and I didn't burn the athlete out, and I didn't scar them for life with my 50-50s fly or something. And they're now ready to move on to that next stage. So I think for the advice I'd give to coaches who are coaching age group swimmers is, and this isn't meant to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form, is to know your role with that swimmer's life and journey. And it's, what do you need to give them to get them to the next stage? If you've got, I mean, I had a girl, like I say, the girl that won nationals, when she won nationals, she was 13. And she was only I refused to give her more than 6 sessions per week. I was like, because I can offer you 9, but what's the point? When you hit 14, if you're on 9 sessions a week and you're plateauing, where do you go? If I offer you 6, you've always got somewhere to go. And then I'll offer you 7, then you've got somewhere, then you can keep going and keep going. So there's that natural progression. And I think for age group coaches is just understand your part of that journey. You're not going to be there at the end, but you can be a big reason that they get to the end.
Right. And that end is many years away, and they're, maybe early 30s, mid 30s, and, have longevity in the sport. And
We'll look at David Plummer. First Olympics in his 30s. And he came away with a silver medal and a gold medal.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. And I think David's one of those people who he will tell you, he knew that his best years were going to be coming later on.
And he had a great year leading to those trials as well. He had a great season leading to those trials.
It was amazing. Yeah, he's definitely one of those kinds of stories that you're definitely talking about. Well, I know that for you, it's going to be an amazing road ahead. I know you're talking about what you want in the next 5 years. I know you probably could see that destination, but it's going to be really fun, I'm sure, for you to work yourself toward it. And I'm sure you have a lot of coaches and athletes who are definitely motivated to help, not just you, but to have Crawley get to that. So congratulations on everything you've done so far. And we're going to definitely be checking up on Crawley to see what the next steps in the progress are going to be.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's going to be an exciting few years ahead. That much I can say.
Yeah.
But no, thank you.
Very much. Will Philpot, the head coach of Crawley Swim Club. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody else for joining us today. And as we've discovered throughout this whole interview, it's not just about the destination. It's also about the journey. We'll see you next time.